Hello viewers, all practical observe. My name is Master Freedom Uchechukwu Iyechukwu Doris Obiegere Michael Owuzo. My today's presentation is the impact of carbon emission on the climate change in Nigeria. Discuss the challenges and proper solutions. But from carbon dioxide CO2, we get the English word carbon. What is the meaning of carbon emissions? According to Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary, 1948 to 2015, the word carbon emission is the release of carbon compounds into the atmosphere. It is all about greenhouse gas emission, which is the main contributor to climate change. Since greenhouse gas emissions are often calculated as carbon dioxide CO2 equivalents, they are often referred to as carbon emissions. Even during the Industrial Revolution, the burning of fossil fuels has increased, which directly correlates to the increase of carbon dioxide level in our atmosphere, and thus the rapid increase of global warming. Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary, 1948 to 2015, United Nations Framework Convention, 1992. Climate change is perceived to be a change of climate which is attributed indirectly to the human activities that alters the composition of the global atmosphere and add to the natural climate variability, which is observed over a comparable period of time. United Nations Framework Convention 1992, the major cause and anthropogenic source of CO2 emissions the burning of fossil fuels, what is the largest source of methane, CH4, and nitrous oxide, N2O emissions, which are from the agricultural processing. Methane, CH4, accounts for 20% of the global emission and 25 times as harmful as carbon dioxide, CO2, due to its greater trapping ability. On the other hand, the climate change is referred to as long-term shifts in temperature, weather patterns. Such shifts can be natural due to changes in sun activity or large volcanic eruption. But since 1800s, eating human activities has been the major driver of climate change, primarily due to the burning of fuels like coal, oil, and gas. Burning of fossil fuels can generate greenhouse gas emissions that acts like a blanket wrapped around the earth, trapping the sun heat and raising temperature. International Framework Convention 1992. The main greenhouse gases that are causing climate change in Nigeria are carbon dioxide CO2, methane CH4, and nitrous oxide N2O. These come from using gasoline in driving cars or coal for heating buildings, for example. Clearing the bushland and cutting down forests also release carbon monoxide, CO2 emission, while agricultural oil and gas operation produces methane, N2O emissions. United Nations Framework Convention 1992. And by so doing, the energy industry, transportation, building, agriculture, and land use are among the main sectors that are causing greenhouse gases in Nigeria. Therefore, billions of climate scientists have shown that human beings are responsible for global heating over the last 200 years, and human activities such as the one ab initio are causing greenhouse gases that are warming the world faster at any given time more than the last 2000 years ago. The average temperature of Earth's surface is now 1.2 centigrades, warmer than it was in the late 1800s before the Industrial Revolution, and more warmer than it was in the last 100,000 years ago. Nation Framework Convention 1992. The last decade, 2011 to 2020, was the moment on record which of the last 4 decades has been more warmer than any previous decades. Many researchers think that the climate change is mainly means warmer temperature. But temperature rise is only the beginning of the story because the Earth itself is a system where everything is connected. The world changes in one area can influence changes in all other areas. United Nations Framework Convention 1992. The challenges of climate change in Nigeria includes, amongst others, intense drought, water scarcity, severe fires, rising sea level, flooding, melting polar ice, catastrophic storms, and declining biodiversity. Climate change can affect our health, ability to grow food, housing, safety, and work. Some of us are more vulnerable to climate impact, such as people living in the big islands, nations, and other developing countries. Conditions like sea level rise and saltwater intrusion have advanced to the point where the whole communities have had to relocate, protected droughts are putting people in risk of famine. In the future, the number of people displaced by weather-related events is expected to rise. Every increase in the global warming matters a lot. United Nations Framework Convention 1992. The United Nations research reports that billions of scientists and government reviewers agree that limiting global temperature to more than 2.5 centigrade will help us avoid the worst climate impact and maintain a viable climate. There are policies that currently in place point up to 3.1% of warming by the end of this century. The impact of the carbon emissions of the climate change in Nigeria come from every part of the world and affect everyone. But some countries produce much more than others. United Nations Framework Convention 1992. The 10 biggest emitters, yes, China, United States of America, India, European Union, Russian Federation, Brazil, United Kingdom, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and Africa together accounted for more than half of greenhouse gas emission by 2023. By contrast, the 47 least developed countries accounted for 3% of global greenhouse gas emission. Everyone must take climate action, but people and countries creating more of the problem have a greater responsibility to act first. International Framework Convention 1992. The impact of carbon emissions on the climate change in Nigeria can be resolved by delivering the economic benefit to the people while improving our lives and protecting the environment. United Nations Framework Convention 1992. We also have the global frameworks and other agreements to guide the progress at the Sustainable Development Goals 2050 to 2030. National Framework Convention 1992 on the Paris Agreement 2015-2016. Three broad categories of action: cutting emissions, adapting to climate impact, and financing required adjustment. Switching energy systems from fossil fuel to renewables like solar or wind will reduce the emission by driving the change. The International Framework Convention 1992, the Paris Agreement 2015-2016, Sustainable Development Goals 2015 to 2030. But we have to act now. Once some growing number of countries are committing to net zero emission by 2050. The emissions must be sliced down by 2053 to keep the warming below 2.5 centigrade. Achieving this means the huge decline of oil and gas and coal production and consumption of all fossil fuels need to be cut down by 30% in 2030 to avoid the catastrophic level of climate change. The Sustainable Development Goals 2050 to 2030, International Framework Convention 1992, the Paris Agreement 2015-2016, adapting to climate consequences will protect people's home, business, livelihood, infrastructure, and natural ecosystems, would cover current impact and those likely in the future. Adoption will be required everywhere and must be prioritized now for the vulnerable people with fewest resources to cope with climate hazards because the rate of return can be high. Sustainable Development Goal 2050 to 2030, International Framework Convention 1992, the Paris Agreement 2015 to 2016. Any warning system for disasters save lives and properties and can deliver benefits to take them the initial cost. Climate action requires significant financial investment by governments, private sectors, entrepreneurs, intergovernmental and business investors. Inaction on this is vastly more expensive. The critical step is for developed countries to support the developing and underdeveloped countries so they could adapt and move towards greener economy. Sustainable Development Goals 2015-2030, International Framework Convention 1992 Paris Agreement 2015 to 2016. In conclusion, we can propose solution by looking at the climate. We can change in Nigeria, which is seen to be daunting yet is not insurmountable. Understanding its causes, effects, and consequences, we can better appreciate the urgency to act fast. For the time for rhetoric has passed. Decisive action is required at every level of society. The Sustainable Development Goals 2015 to 2030, the United Nations Framework Convention 1992, the Paris Agreement 2015 to 2016. As we face the reality of climate change in our day-to-day activities, we should unite our good efforts to foster sustainable future generations to come to the planet Earth. Ultimately, humanity's survival depends on our willingness to confront this crisis ahead of us. Sustainable Development Goals, United Nations Framework Convention 1992, the Paris Agreement 2015 to 2016. References on demand. Thank you.